Have you ever looked at your garage or your basement or your barn and thought, how did it get this bad? I have. And when we moved from our 2-car garage in the suburbs to this 40 by 60 pole barn, I honestly thought our storage problems were behind us, but they followed us, and for 3 years this place stayed a mess. Tonight I want to show you how we finally got it under control and why this story was never really about the barn.
For me, the garage has always been one of the most honest spaces in the house. You can clean up almost everything else before company comes over, but when you simply have too much stuff, that's where the buck stops. I've never been the guy who cleans up as he goes. I was usually squeezing renovation projects in between airline trips, so cleanup rarely made the schedule. And when I got home, I was right back at it. On top of that, when we moved to Michigan, my in-laws moved in with us, and we were suddenly fitting 2 households into 1 house. Over the years, I tried all kinds of storage solutions, but it felt like playing whack-a-mole. Whatever I managed to organize in one area just seemed to migrate somewhere else in the house. In 2021, I made a major push to renovate the garage. That meant finding creative ways to offload tools and building supplies. We moved as much as we could to our property up north, and I packed a lot of the rest into this trailer. Once we moved here to our new house, the first order of business was unloading that trailer, because getting to anything inside of it wasn't ideal, and we finally had the room to not have to anymore. So I built these 3 shelves first. Later that year, I built the shelves along this wall. But as we kept bringing things over from our other property, organized the house, and finished what turned into about 15 different projects here at the new property, the clutter slowly came right back. Eventually, it just became impossible to keep organized. Finally, in December of last year, I knew it was time to stop everything else and focus on organizing the barn until it was finished. The mezzanine had become so packed that it was hard to get to anything I needed, so I started by moving all of my scrap lumber onto this pallet. That alone freed up a surprising amount of space and made everything much easier to access from the ground floor. Next, I built these storage bins to fit the space as tightly as possible. As I started organizing the things I didn't need every day, it was almost like watching dominoes fall. The huge organization problem I'd been fighting for years seemed to dissolve almost overnight. The last thing I did was buy matching storage tubs, print labels, and create an inventory of everything in both the tubs and the 6 large wooden storage bins. Now I know exactly what I have, and more importantly, where to find it.
We just finished cleaning up the barn again tonight. Only took about an hour. Previous times it might have taken days. places out here that have my father-in-law's handprints all over it. For instance, these boxes, he was always taking the time to buy boxes like this and to fill them up with screws he thought I would need when I was doing various projects. And while I normally do have plenty of screws, I have over time found these extremely helpful because I knew exactly where to find them and when I needed them. The previous owner built these storage stalls for goats that she had. We don't have any goats, so I don't need it for that. My brother actually came up with the idea when I first moved here to use it for tool storage, and that actually has worked out quite well for us. A couple examples in here of my father-in-law, Jimmy. He loved Harbor Freight. His philosophy was, why buy one tape measure when you can buy 25? My dad often teases me that I have more screwdrivers than anybody alive. Thanks to Jimmy, that's probably not very far from the truth. Here's one of Jimmy's favorites. He would often bring back bags of these razor blades. Now, they don't last very long, but when they're new, they are fantastic. I think he would wait until he saw them on sale and 25 cents or something, and he would just load up. If you take this box, for example, it's a great display of how in Jimmy's world you don't buy a pair of safety goggles if you can buy 20 or 30. Here's a hard hat I'd forgotten that I had. Probably should have wore this the other day when we were cutting trees, but we'll try to remember that for next time. First aid kits if we need that. I told you earlier that there was more to this story for why I have 60 storage tubs and 6 huge wooden containers and endless screwdrivers and tape measures and drills and screws. Specifically, why I have so much stuff in this barn, in the house, but a lot of that's migrated to the barn, is because of my good buddy Jimmy. So 11 years ago, it became evident to my wife Beth and I that we needed to return to Michigan to help take care of her aging parents, Mary and Jim. And so we were retired from the Marines in 2015 and relocated to Sterling Heights, Michigan. And one of the first things that we needed to do was to transition them from their house that they had lived in for 40 years to the house that we were all going to be living in together. And it was pretty dilapidated. It was in pretty rough shape. Mary was near 70 and Jim was approaching his mid-70s. And they both had various health issues. So I kind of took the lead in getting the house emptied out. But Jimmy was still driving, and he had a small trailer attached to his car, and I had a big trailer attached to my truck. And we were doing our best to let him tell us what was important to get on that small trailer to get to the new house. And he was having a tough time deciding what was important and what wasn't. Now, for Mary, it was an easy process. She was very quick to make the tough decisions and get things processed out that she knew she didn't need anymore. Because there's only so much room in the new house. We were a family of 5 already before they moved in. But Jimmy was having a tough time. And so we could tell he was strained. He was afraid to leave us because he was afraid what was going to go missing while he was gone. And we were trying to put some of the most obvious things in the big trailer. But when we looked out the kitchen window, I could see Jimmy was taking stuff that we would have considered garbage or stuff that needed to go to Goodwill or whatever, and was trying to overload his small trailer. So I told my wife, I said, we decided together that this is done. We're going to take all of Jimmy's stuff and we're going to go put it in storage, and we'll sort through this over the next few months or years on helping him let go of this stuff. And I can only imagine what that felt like. I mean, you're in your mid-70s and you've lived in this house for 40 years and it's where you've raised your kids. And in some ways it's like your life is being upended, and all the things you spent all that time building are now kind of going away. So we did our best to extend grace in that situation. And over the next few years, there was definitely some stuff that we worked to get rid of with him, but a lot of it ended up coming back to our house. And our 2-car garage was quickly overwhelmed by a lot of this stuff. And so it became important to me to find ways to store it or to efficiently put it out of the way so that we could find the stuff that we did need. And so it was this ongoing process. There's so many things I could talk about living with other adults in your household when you're a family, but your parents. And it's important to Beth and I that we do our best to honor our parents. It's one of our core values. And so we did that. And we're not perfect. And I can look back on all the mistakes that we made, and they were many. And I could look at Jimmy and Mary and say they weren't perfect. But there's no one that's perfect. There's only one man that was ever perfect. And so we did our best to have grace for one another. I can just think in the beginning, I would go on flying trips, and when I would come back, I would have shelves built. Now, sometimes they weren't in the place I would want to have built those shelves, or things that I thought I wanted to hang on to or keep were now tore down and replaced. And one time I remember showing up to 200 concrete blocks, big blocks in my backyard that really didn't have a purpose. They were just on sale. And it took me 3 years before I could finally get those out of the backyard. Another time I showed up and half of my tall bushes were cut down. Not removed, just cut down. And so there was some growing pains living with Jimmy, but eventually I think we learned how to work together pretty good. And Jimmy was very loyal, always encouraging. He always bragged on the work that I did, over bragged really. He wanted to take pictures and take it to the senior center and show his friends. And over a period of a few years, the work that he was doing stopped as his health began to fail, but the buying of stuff never really did. And as much as we tried to slow that down, that was kind of an uphill battle. Sometimes I would come home and there would just be bags from Harbor Freight or the dollar store. And that's kind of who Jimmy was. He didn't want to buy the really good stuff once. His philosophy was buy it as cheap as you can and buy as much as you can. And so that's where a lot of this stuff in boxes comes from. It's not the stuff that you would necessarily buy or that I would necessarily buy. but it's also the stuff that I wouldn't throw away. And here's the crazy thing: as time goes along, I've lost count of how many times I can go in one of those boxes, especially now that they're labeled and organized, and find something that Jimmy bought for me that he thought I'd need, and turns out I do need that thing in that moment. And so I'm so thankful. I promised to be transparent with you in a previous video, and so just being totally honest, this has been tough for me a little bit tonight. We lost Jimmy got sick on us about 14 months ago and had to relocate to assisted living. And then we lost him 9 months ago. And so since then, coming out and working in the barn, as messy as it's been, and I've shown you what that looked like, there's not been a single day that I don't feel like he's right here with me. And it's just stuff, right? Sometimes we complain because we don't have enough stuff. And sometimes we complain because we maybe have too much stuff, from Harbor Freight in my case. It's just stuff. What matters is our relationship with the ones that we love. And so I'm so thankful that Jimmy and I learned how to live together. We lived together for over 10 years. And I'm so thankful we figured that out. And I feel like I did my very best to take care of Jimmy the last years of his life. And now when I look at this barn, I can't help to think that he's going to help take care of me for the rest of my life with what he's left and what he's passed down and stuff I can pass down to my kids. And so I just wanted to leave you with that. That's the message tonight. Whatever season of life that you're in, it won't last forever. Whether it's a good season or whether it's a challenging season, it's a season. And there's a time for everything. And the season that you're in will come to a close. So do your best, as I'll do my best, to keep your eye focused on the prize. Focus on people more than stuff. And money is just stuff. And stuff is just stuff. But how you treat people, how you love people, that's going to last forever. Debrief complete.